I want to see my head.
It's only my head.
I'm really glad to be here. I spent most of the time trying to come back into my body. It's been a really educational experience, writing these talks, writing this talk. I mean, I haven't had children, but I felt like I went through labor. I sort of knew what I wanted to talk about. And what I usually do is, I'll just start reading things and things kind of bang around in my head. And then I'll start to put things in the computer and then I'll paste and move things all around and something happens. But I got really stuck. And I think part of why I got really stuck is because of what I'm going to talk about. I've been reading the new book that came out by Suzuki Roshi about becoming oneself. And this has just definitely been up for me. I had a lot of change in the last year. Yes, most of you know that my wife passed away a little over a year ago. And a few months after that, my great aunt, who was like a mom to me, she lived in France and she passed away. And I just, and I got Dharma transmitted. In my free time. Yeah, so it's just like, okay, let me just I felt like everything had been pulled out from under me and I was just sort of like floating. And as I watched myself in this process of grieving, I realized that I'm still doing it, which doesn't surprise me, but everybody grieves differently. And my grief in the beginning was not, I wasn't feeling a lot of things. I was mostly incapacitated. I think what happens for me is because I'm not always able to connect with my emotions, that like my body takes it all on. So basically I stayed in bed for 3 months, just about. And I allowed myself comfort from things outside of myself, like my dogs. We spent a lot of time in bed watching old movies. And really, I was just trying to stay here. And things got better. After a few months, I was kind of showing up and stuff, but I was just still so, I don't know, just unmoored. I was telling my grief counselor one time, it's like, have you ever been hang gliding? It's like, I feel like I'm still hang gliding. I don't know where I'm going to land. And I remember her saying to me that, when you lose someone like that, you're never the same person. And that really kind of stuck with me. And so I think my journey really has been, for me, coming back to myself. When you're in a relationship for a long time, your life sort of forms around that person and you compromise on things and maybe things aren't exactly the way you would like them, but you make a life with someone and then suddenly they're not there anymore. So I thought, I started thinking about, well, who am I? Who am I? Why am I here? All those really philosophical questions that we ask. And I realized that what I was really asking myself wasn't, who am I? In terms of, when I think of that question, I think, I can tell you a whole bunch of factual things about myself. I can tell you I'm 68, I'm a lesbian, I was born in Hollywood, I was a physical therapist, but none of those are who I am. And I feel like this process has been about clearing away all of the things that have gotten in the way of my being who I am, of my becoming who I am. Um, the famous Dogen quote about the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. And I have a really unfortunate habit of thinking way too much. And I go down these little rabbit holes. And I start thinking, well, I don't even know what the self is. What is that even? How can I forget something if I don't know what it is? So that's kind of where I started. And it's not really something you can verbalize. I think, we all know from the things we've been studying this last month that, we're born with Buddha nature, we're born with everything we need. But we don't know it. And we have to learn how to get back in touch with that. And so for me, the first part really was just, watching myself, being mindful. I think mindfulness is really the bottom line for everything we do. Because without that, what I really, really want is to be here. And to not get in my own way. I think, during our lives as we grow up, it's sort of inevitable that, we're seeking validation for who we think we are. And we get really, really good at it. And so, you can like live in a perpetual cycle of asking the world to affirm who you think you are. But that's not it, and we know it's not it, so we keep asking again and again and again. The difficult part for me for looking at myself is that I have to see what was there. Yeah, it's kind of unavoidable. And this is where we have to be really, really careful. I had to be really careful to be compassionate with myself. And to say, I see that I do this thing. And it's just a thing that I do. It isn't good, it isn't bad. It doesn't mean I'm a good person or a bad person. I needed to start to observe my own habits and ways of reacting to things. Because I realized that I was really good at making stories up about things. Like just the other day, I heard myself say this, and I've said this like 100 times, and I just thought, I don't even know if that's true. And what it is that I've always said, I remember saying this to Chris, and she just looked at me like I was crazy. I said, I'm not a deep person. I'm not philosophical. I don't care where we go when we die. I don't care what the meaning of life is, I just want to live. I just want to live, and I just want to try to be of service. And I've been thinking recently actually that, is that really true? Or is that just a way for me to avoid looking deeply at things based on my fear that you won't think I'm philosophical enough, you won't think I'm spiritual enough, and that you're all going to find out that I'm an imposter. So I don't say that anymore. Other things I don't say anymore is this is something I used to say all the time. I just can't believe I used to say it. It would be in a relation to some situation or something, and I would say, I just don't care enough. It's like, is that really true? I think I do care enough. So that the thing about practice is that as we start to look at ourselves, it's not uncommon for people to just kind of grab on much more tightly to who they think they are. And it kind of becomes, it's like the weight of the world kind of falls on you. So that, the more effort we expend trying to confirm who we think we are so that we can feel safe. It's exhausting. So I was reading something, and I apologize, I can't remember who wrote this, but she was talking about our original nature and the true self. And that this idea of the self falling away can kind of be a trap. It can kind of be a cage that you put yourself in. And that for me, my way seeking mind keeps bringing me back. And slowly, through looking at what really is, the cage, that cage door starts to open, and you have these moments where you think, oh, that's me, that's who I am. I don't know if any of this is making sense to you, but and so I've really been enjoying this book by Suzuki Roshi. It's like every single thing I read in there, it's yeah. And so he says, don't try to figure out who you are. Don't try to seek yourself. Don't try to figure out who you are. The you that found that way is far from the real you. It's not you anymore. But when I go my way, wherever I turn, I meet myself. So I think what we learn in this practice is how to treat ourselves and other people with compassion. And how to create as little bad karma as we can. But I was very heartened to read that he also said that the power of practice can turn your bad karma into good karma. It can change the direction. It won't make karma go away, but it can change the direction of your karma. So trying to figure out who we are by thinking about it, it limits us because our mind is limited. And he said that before you practice our way, you're a Buddha. But when you practice in a small, self-centered way, you'll lose yourself. And as I said before, the idea of mindfulness, or as Suzuki says, seeing things as it is. And everybody tried to correct his grammar, and he's like, no, I mean seeing things as it is. I know it's not grammatically correct, because the moment you begin to intellectualize something, it's gone. The poem Shin Shin Ming, Trust in Mind, that's what the whole poem is about. It says the same thing over and over and over again. And that is, once you begin to examine and evaluate and discriminate and compare, you're lost. What our practice is being right here, right now, to exist in a whole universe that makes sense to you before you think about it. This is very tricky. Sanaki Roshi said that he was the one who said, don't put another head on top of your own. And Suzuki said, our practice is to find our own head and not the thinking head. And so we have a lot of tools in practice to help us. He's flying. To help us do this. And I really feel that mindfulness is just the bottom line. Non-judgmental observation. It's not as easy as it sounds. I find myself frequently, especially when I get in a situation where I'm just like, I'm in overdrive thinking about this thing. And so I will just sit down with a piece of paper and I'll write down, what are the facts about this? Okay, the facts might say that A said something to me. Okay. And, on the other side are my stories. Well, they said this because what they really meant was this, and blah, 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 blah. These stories, they're insidious. I mean, I'm familiar with most of my stories, but every once in a while I get a new one. It's just like, oh my God. So to constantly, I think, be aware, being mindful, our practice of Zazen, and just our daily awareness, how Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, you wash the dishes to wash the dishes. It's so tempting. Distractions are so tempting. But to keep coming back and to let it be okay that maybe you're not, I don't know if people can be mindful like 100% of the time, and I don't really care. I think it's more important the intention and the direction than the attainment of anything, because I think the attainment of things really is a delusion. So cultivating mindfulness, for me, it's that empty mirror. It's that mirror where I don't see my habits, I don't see my opinions, I don't see my preferences. I try to see what's really actually there. It's important to be kind to yourself, and this is not, for me, it's not an easy thing. I mean, I can go from zero to piece of shit and like so fast. They're all better than me. It was a mistake. Chris is gonna take my robes away. And really beneath all that, I have a lot of the same fears and insecurities everybody has. But I also need to keep remembering that I have a deep, deep desire to live a kind and compassionate life and to be helpful wherever I can. And when I remember that, it's a lot easier to let go of all of these other things that are just really, they're self-centered. Like I used to think I was being really humble when I would say things like, oh, I'm just not really good at that, or da 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 da. And one of my teachers, Darlene Cohen, said to me, she said, putting yourself down isn't humility, it's a form of self-involvement. And that, I found that really shocking. And then she mentioned that I was very self-involved, which I wish had been more shocking than it was. So, but yeah, it's about, like Chelsea was telling us about the Mars, about impermanence, and how important it is to remember how transient everything is. I mean, that is so in my face this year. I'm trying to, what is it, the 5 remembrances or something, everything we love and cherish is gonna go away, and then, we're all gonna die. And it's true, it's true. So it's this delicate balance of acknowledging and feeling the losses that we have, but not becoming stuck in them. Understanding that, people come, people go, situations change, and that's really a normal part of life. And it's our clinging to wanting to be comfortable and have things stay in a way that we understand or that we can predict. I've been trying to have new experiences, and it's just, yeah, it's really challenging. Because of the way I grew up, I think, my MO has always been, don't look at me. I want to be like back here, over here, don't look at me, don't ask me anything. And I think this is just a habit that got so ingrained in me. I lived my childhood was, I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't fun. It was like, I felt like the way that I could survive was to stay under the radar, that moving targets don't get hit, and that I just was in this house with these people and I needed to get out. And I remember how disappointed I was when I got out and things didn't get better. Oh my God. So, You know, and I did what a lot of people do. I tried to deal with that through drugs and alcohol, and that didn't work. And actually it was through AA that I first got introduced to spiritual principles. And after, 3 or 4 years in AA, I just felt like I wanted to grow more spiritually, and that's kind of when I wandered into Buddhism. That is so cool, thank you. When we were in Canada, I heard, at first I thought it was a dog, and then I realized it was a bird. Did anybody hear that? It was a trip. So. Seeing things just as they are and seeing ourselves as we are, not as a concept. I think Zazen is kind of like putting money in the bank. It's like you establish this center in yourself that's always there, that you can always get in touch with. And they say that I will develop a sense of composure or consistency. That's what they say. And I have experienced that many, many times, but I also find that I need to have a lot of tools to deal with my own anxiety so that I can really, really stay here and pay attention. And when I can do that, things are great. Things go well. Suzuki also warns us in this book to be careful of your motivation when you do something on purpose. And I found that really interesting. Because, we talk about not striving, not seeking, not trying to attain. But to be open and to allow things to come to you. But yeah, I don't know. I find that a little challenging, and I like the idea, but I also kind of want to have a little hand in the pot, go there, you go there. So I think it's a practice gives us a confidence. I don't know that I'd say it's faith, because that's kind of a red flag word for me. But our practice allows us to come back to our true selves, to realize that through our society, for whatever, there are all these obstacles, but they're impermanent too. So, and he said the main purpose of our practice is to realize what we are, what things are, in a true sense, so that we're not caught up by our ideas of ourselves. One other thing that I absolutely love this has really helped me a lot. Somebody asked him, why does he wear a robe? And he said, I wear this robe because it symbolizes, in its true sense, the spirit of using material as it is, and the spirit of me being myself. And I think I would agree that that's why I wear this robe today.
Could you say that?
Could you say it again?
And they funny. He said, I wear this robe because it symbolizes, in a true sense, the spirit of using material as it is, and the spirit of me being myself. So that went pretty well. I did like 20 minutes, Chelsea.
I wasn't timing you, but what did you go 20, Debbie?
I know, sometimes you just have to cut yourself some slack and just show up and do the best you can. And I think if you're wholehearted and your intentions are good, it's like, all I really want is to be able to be as helpful as I can and to share what I can that might help you. So Thank you.
You did it, Debbie. You did it.
Oh, that's enough.
I'm wondering, like, does anyone know any secrets for the flies? Like, you put a little. Talk to them, you know, like when you're camping and there's yellow jackets, you put a little dish out and they go there.
They go to the kitchen, but they're in here.
Sorry.
If you have a ceiling fan,
Yeah,
that
does that
works
work?
for me, but
Herbal
I don't,
bug
we,
spray in my car.
it's like this in here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to make sure that stays closed.
Okay.
It was,
I made
it was
that.
open this morning, yeah.
It was open. All right, well, I want to just bow again, Debbie, thank you. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
thank
It's
you.
beautiful, and it's so fun to teach with Debbie and to say, what are you gonna talk about? And how do we weave them together? And what are we doing? And this theme of becoming yourself really stood out to me as I looked at what Chris had asked me to talk about in this book. If you tuned in Tuesday, I was speaking on the 3 seals, or sometimes called the 3 marks of existence, that Thich Nhat Hanh frames as, I don't have them written in front of me, but is this no separate self, impermanence, and then he gives us nirvana instead of dukkha, which we often hear suffering as the 3rd mark. But he invites us to look at nirvana as the 3rd seal or mark of existence. And he calls those the keys to the 3 doors of liberation. And these are some lesser known teachings that I absolutely love and adore and was excited to talk about. As I started looking at them and trying to frame what I wanted to say, I realized they're about becoming ourselves. They're about how do we become ourselves completely, which is to be a bodhisattva. So I'm going to talk now about mostly the 3rd door, door number 3 today. Door, the brand new car. Yeah, and I'll say them and I'll talk a little bit about the first one too. The first door of liberation is emptiness. And just for the sake of time, I won't say too much about that. I'll say a little bit, give us a refresher on emptiness. The second door is signlessness, anamita, and I'll talk about that on Tuesday night if you're able to tune in. A practice that has supported me through grief for the last 15 years. Really appreciate and I'm grateful for the practice of signlessness. Tonight or today, what I'll bring forward is the 3rd door, aimlessness. And you heard a little bit of it that Debbie was noting right there. What is this non-striving, non-efforting, non-doing, goallessness? It's sometimes translated as goallessness. Yeah. Or desirelessness. Look at some more. And Thich Nhat Hanh calls these 3 concentrations, which I really appreciate. And just to touch on emptiness here for a minute, come back to that. It's like he offers the phrase shunyata samadhi, which to me as a lay person, a lay teacher, that feels like my whole orientation to the world is like facing outward to everything with a concentration on emptiness, on no separate self, no separate anything. Everything is interdependently arising. It's all right here, soaring around. And can I hold that, or Thich Nhat Hanh called that is right view. Like, can we hold that shunyata samadhi in everything that we do, or more and more things that we do, so that it's being installed in the operating system here. We're rooted in shunyata samadhi in more and more things. Stabilizes the mind, actually, gives the mind something to do. Come back. Interdependence is here. What's the context? This thing that's arising in me is related to so many other things. What are the mycelial networks that are at play here in this person in front of me and the response they may be having to something? It's very stabilizing. I think for neurodivergent people, it can regulate the nervous system, and maybe we would call it a stim. It's like give an internal anchor, focal point on something to regulate the mind, so that the mind isn't, doing what it wants to do all the time. This is from the book on emptiness. Wherever we go, we touch the nature of emptiness in everything we contact. We look deeply at the table, the blue sky, our friend, the mountain, the river, our anger, our happiness, and see that these are all empty of a separate self. When we touch these things deeply, we see the interbeing and interpenetrating nature of all that is. Emptiness does not mean non-existence. It means interdependent, co-arising, impermanence, and non-self. So it's not nihilism, and it's easy, I think, especially as Westerners, for us to get stuck in that, this word empty. In Shunyata, the root in there is empty of a separate self, of absence of independent existence, not the absence of existence altogether. So something is here. It's just not what we think it is, because the mind has that discriminating nature. If we remember the cookies Thich Nhat Hanh was making at Tassajara, they go into the Lord. They go into discriminative thinking, me and them, us and them. So we drop that. So we drop. So this is the first, I think I'll stop there on emptiness. This is the first door of liberation. So now coming back to aimlessness, a pranahita, goallessness, desirelessness, aimlessness. And Thich Nhat Hanh writes, the third door of liberation is aimlessness, a pranahita. There is nothing to do, nothing to realize, no program, no agenda. The rose doesn't have to do anything. The purpose of the rose is to be a rose. Your purpose is to be yourself. And when I hear this, it feels like such a relief to me, especially in colonial capitalism, especially in wellness culture, self-improvement culture. Doing your value is linked to your productivity. You can drop all of that and just be here. The rose is just being a rose. Just be me. And what an act of to me, that feels like a profound act of resistance against all of the oppressive systems that would have us shopping, doing, consuming, trying to get away from the feeling, stuck in shame. So aimlessness to me feels like a practice of disrupting shame and unworthiness.
Say that again.
Yeah, aimlessness, a pranahita, feels to me like a practice of disrupting shame and unworthiness. Right here, it's enough. I am enough. I am enough. And when I started looking more deeply at this practice, look out if you start going down the rabbit holes. I was like on a Sunday banging my head against the walls, going through the Pali Canon, trying to understand. And boy, wow, for aimlessness. Right? So I had to set it all down. But I want to say this, I'm not a scholar, and that these practices have a different flavor as I'm beginning to understand them in early Buddhism. So a pranahita, and what I'll talk about on Tuesday, the signlessness, my understanding, and I've reached out to other teachers to try to help me, do I have this right? Is that in early Buddhism, these were meant for being on the cushion, right? So it's like, we know it in Shikantaza, right? We sit down without this desire for enlightenment. And that, I think, in early Buddhism was the flavor of a pranahita. I'm sitting down and I'm going to drop the meditation devices while I'm on the cushion. And then Mahayana comes along and says, how do you take that out into the world for all beings? So Thich Nhat Hanh is giving us this possibility of aimlessness in activity, because there is something to do. We have to go to work. We have to pay the bills. But can we carry a little bit of that flavor with us? He writes, aimlessness takes the place of grasping. The most important practice is aimlessness, not running after things, not grasping. So it's related to non-attachment and non-clinging. letting go and letting be. And this is poet Dana Fowles. There's no controlling life. Try corralling a lightning bolt containing a tornado down a stream and it will create a new channel. Resist and the tide will sweep you off your feet. Allow and grace will carry you to higher ground. The only safety lies in letting it all in. The wild and the weak, fear, fantasies, failures, and successes. When loss rips off the door of the heart, or sadness veils your vision with despair, practice becomes simply bearing the truth. In the choice to let go of your known way of being, the whole world is revealed to your new eyes. In the choice to let go of your known way of being, the whole world is revealed to your new eyes. And then just to name it, this doesn't mean to just meander through your whole life without purpose. It doesn't mean to allow violence to take place. It doesn't mean to not stand up for injustice. In fact, I think it's quite the mechanism that allows us to stand up, because I've been renewed, I'm fresh in here, and I am determined to stop the violence of continual self-improvement inside myself. So Suzuki Roshi had it for us, he says that you're perfect just the way you are, and you could use a little improvement. And I love it. This is like, it's right here. We can play in the harmony here, the tension here. 154, if you have the book or you want to look this up later. I won't read all of it, but I encourage you, if you do have the book, to check out the whole page, the whole chapter. He says, someone asked me, aren't you worried about the state of the world? I allowed myself to breathe. And then I said, what is most important is not to allow your anxiety about what happens in the world to fill your heart. If your heart is filled with anxiety, you'll get sick and you'll not be able to help. There are wars, big and small, in many places that can cause us to lose our peace. Anxiety is the illness of our age, and this was like a decade ago. We worry about ourselves, our family, our friends, our work, and the state of the world. If we allow worry to fill our hearts, sooner or later, we'll get sick. There's something else down here. In fact, your anxiety will only make things worse. Even though things are not as we would like, we can still be content, knowing we are trying our best and will continue to do so. We know how to breathe, smile, and live every moment of our life deeply. We will never, if we don't know, we won't be able to help anyone. So it's reliant on us taking care of ourselves, of touching some of that ease, bringing it in, that then we get up and we can act, we can do something. I would even say that the Buddha field opens in the aimlessness, right? And I would love to be in a conversation with a neuroscientist, right? Because I can imagine how that maps into the brain and the constant doing, like what networks are active here. And when I drop all of that agenda, something arises in that space. We taste something. There's if you've practiced in the Plum Village lineage and Thich Nhat Hanh's lineage, there's songs for everything. It's very, very precious. And there's one that speaks to this. In fact, I think there's several that speak to this quality. I'm not going to sing it, but I'll give you some of the lyrics. Maybe some of you can just pick it up and join in if you wanted another time. But it's, where is it? We're all moving on a journey to nowhere, taking it easy, taking it slow. No more worries, no need to hurry, nothing to carry, let it all go. It's very sweet. I feel it, nothing to carry, let it all go. And then when we link in to our very mortal lives and impermanence, and we imagine nothing to carry, In the light of grief, we know this. Let it go. Whatever that was obstructing our view. Nothing to carry. Don't go. I'm almost done here. I'll give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to some Black feminists that are doing beautiful work. If you're interested in this, Trisha Hersey, you may know her work. Rest is resistance. We take care of ourselves so we can act in the world. And Trisha Hersey even has a little card deck I keep in my office. Just pull the card out and look at it. Remember, come back to taking care of your body. Don't let yourself be, I want to say just like sacrificed on the altar of capitalism. Right? Reclaim it. Adrienne Marie Brown, another author I really appreciate. I won't read it, but maybe I'll send it for the newsletter. She has a poem, Not Busy, Full. Not busy, full. And Sherry, it's something I learned from you that it can't always be CrossFit, right? Like sometimes don't go do your CrossFit. If you love CrossFit, go do your CrossFit. But it can't always be that, right? Like, can it be, instead of a hike, can it be a sojourn? And we just come out and walk. Take care of the subtle energies of the body. And become very protective of that, actually. My time for aimlessness. Allowing time. I'll close with another quote here from the book. Page 153, we're looking at it at home or want to check in later. The Heart Sutra says that there is nothing to attain. We meditate not to attain enlightenment, because enlightenment is already in us. We don't have to search anywhere. We don't need a purpose or a goal. We don't practice in order to obtain some high position. In aimlessness, we see that we do not lack anything, that we are already what we want to become, and our striving just comes to a halt. We're at peace in the present moment, just seeing the sunlight streaming through the window, or hearing the sound of the rain. We don't have to run after anything. We can enjoy every moment. People talk about entering nirvana, but we are already there. Aimlessness and nirvana are one. Things are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's ways unforgettable. I vow to become it. I think we're gonna have a period of outdoor walking now, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to give an encouragement. Oftentimes we pick a path and we stick to it. Maybe there's space, if it felt right, to wander today without an agenda. Right? See how that feels. Maybe it doesn't feel right because you bump into someone and you need to have a designated path. But if it felt right to you, the encouragement is there. Aimlessness is
And I'd just like to add to that, I was thinking the other day, Darlene used to have us do outside meditation and walk around and observe things without naming them. And I found that really, really challenging. It seems like these two things could go
Well,
together.
that's